folks, Jordan here, and welcome to another software overview video. In today's video, we're exploring Ubuntu 6.06 long-term support, otherwise known as Dapper Drake, released on the 1st of June 2006. This is also the very first late-to-ship release of Ubuntu, for people mocking the LTS moniker at the end of the version number. Now, the reason why this was the case was the development of this particular release of Ubuntu was not done by the time the deadline of the version number came around, which was initially supposed to be version 6.04, meaning April 2006. So what ended up happening was the development process ended up getting extended to June 2006, so that way they could finish the development. Which I guess, if it's for a long-term support release, you kind of want it to work and be done with development so that way it'll actually be a good long-term support release instead of being a very bad long-term support release. You know what I'm talking about. So that was actually something noteworthy with this release. It was the first long-term support release, but it was also the first one to be late to the deadline. So, whatever. Anyway, so while we're on the topic of this particular release of Ubuntu, I actually looked online to see if I could find an old website showing off the old Ubuntu 6.06 long-term support release when it first came out. And as it turns out, I actually found something. So this is from the 15th of June 2006, so let's check it out. As you see here, they advertise Ubuntu 6.06 LTS with long-term support, released on the 1st of June 2006. And they have their lovely little speech on the front. Now this website is a little broken because it's supposed to be designed for a lower resolution display, so it's supposed to be something like, like this, or really small. It's supposed to be meant for a really small display, but I'm obviously using it on a 1080p display here, so everything's really spread out here. Ubuntu is a complete Linux-based operating system freely available with both community and professional support. It is developed by a large community, and we invite you to participate too. The Ubuntu community is built on the ideas enshrined in the Ubuntu philosophy. That software should be available free of charge, that software tools should be usable by people in their local language and despite any disabilities, and that people should have the freedom to customize and alter their software in whatever way they see fit. Which you could essentially say is the same thing that takes place in Android nowadays, if you think about it. Now, I'm not going to read that third paragraph, but Ubuntu is suitable for both desktop and server use. The current Ubuntu release supports PC, Intel 32-bit, 64-bit PC, AMD 64, and PowerPC architectures. Now, it doesn't really mention this on its website, but one of the main features of this new release of Ubuntu, which I don't know if it was advertised during its major release or afterwards, but in Canonical's own FTP, which still hosts this disk image, by the way, they mention Core 2 Duos, or just Core 2 in general, under the 64-bit section. So I guess that's something of an unofficial little, hey, we support the CPU now, you can go ahead and install it on it, sort of thing, if you know what I mean. But anyway, so let's go ahead and explore the information here on Canonical's website about the desktop version of Ubuntu 6.06 long-term support. Hopefully it has not timed me out yet. I'm not sure. It might have, but this actually kind of sort of still does work. Obviously the download link is not going to work, and it's going to be quite slow in my case, but it should still load if I wait patiently enough. Yep, there it goes. Ubuntu on the desktop. Ubuntu offers you a complete Linux-based operating system, including all the major applications you need to play and work. With a strong focus on a desktop that just works, that doesn't definitely take anything from Apple, Ubuntu is a great choice for home or the office. The base system and all included software is free, and support is available from the community or by professional support providers. I don't know who still actually does professional Ubuntu support. I guess I'd have to look that up online if I was really interested into it. And it goes in and it talks about Ubuntu's ease of use, its simplistic desktop environment based around GNOME, talks about all its built-in software, and there's a sample of a video, I think, or music video playing there with a .ogg on it. I'm not entirely sure. But this is not VLC. That still did not come with the operating system yet. I don't think VLC came out until like the late 2000s. And even then, I don't know when they integrated it into the OS or if they even did at all. I think you still have to download that separately. But I could be wrong, of course. They also boast their accessibility with a high visibility theme, which puts the whole operating system into monotone and increases the size of the fonts, so that way it's easier to read. And it also boasts its software updates, because this is a long-term support operating system, so of course you get the nice little Windows XP style balloons telling you that updates are available. Although actually they did that too in Windows 2000, so I guess I shouldn't just say Windows XP, because 2000 had the exact same style balloons too. So that's the desktop version. Let me see if there's any information on the server version. Not much, I don't suppose, because it's just a server release. And the first Ubuntu release with a separate server edition was 5.10 in October 2005. So this would be technically Canonical's second major server release of Ubuntu that they ever made. And I know that in 5.10 you still had to type server at the prompt, because they only had like the one disk image. Although that was also the same thing in 5.04, where you had to type in server at the prompt if you wanted a server or a bare bones install. But maybe it wasn't exactly a server edition back in 5.04, but definitely 5.10 had a server release. I know that for a fact. So it's kind of interesting they actually talk about it here on their website, advertising the long-term support version. Now the desktop version of Ubuntu 6.06 got supported up until 2009, and the server release got supported up until 2011. So quite a long time of support. And also, you can't help but just chuckle at the old Canonical logo. I mean, come on. That's just so old looking. So, that's the website in a nutshell. There's not too much else to talk about on the website in particular. Maybe we'll explore some other websites if they happen to load with specific releases, if that's something you guys are interested in. So let me know down below in the comments section if you want me to explore some of these other older websites using the Wayback Machine, because I'd be more than happy to do that for you if you are interested. Now, there are some other notable differences inside of Ubuntu 6.06 long-term support, so we'll get into that here as we start the operating system up from the live disk image. First of which is this new bootloader that's kind of sort of graphical in nature. This was new with 6.06 long-term support. As you know, 5.10 did not have this. It had the same little logo at the top, but not this menu, which allows you to start or install Ubuntu, or start Ubuntu in safe graphics mode, which I believe is like the lowest resolution and the lowest compatible color depth that Ubuntu will run in, which I believe is like 256 colors at 640 by 480 or something like that. I don't remember what the base graphics mode is. It also allows you to check the disk and run a memory test if you really want to, so you can run memtest 86+, which I believe is also new with this particular version of Ubuntu. It thinks I'm running it on a Pentium M, running at 2.7 gigahertz, which is definitely not true. I'm running it on an Intel Core i5, but regardless, it wouldn't even run on an Intel 440BX chipset to begin with. So we're just going to go ahead and exit out of that and start this right up. So one of the big features was the fact that they combined the live CD and the installer disk, or everything that related with the installer or the live CD. They put it on one disk image. So all you had to do was download one disk image, and you could boot up the installation utility from the live disk if you wanted to install Ubuntu, but if not, you didn't have to. Convenience is key, and that's what's nice. That's what I appreciate. Also, one thing is this splash screen that you were just looking at before it disappeared back into the text mode cursor is now on shutdown as well. Well, and this also, that splash screen thing there was new with the chromey look to it, trying to replicate Windows Vista, of course. Everybody was doing that back in 2006, including Apple. So, yeah. But anyway, as I was saying, Usplash, which was the splash screen that was used at the startup, is also on shutdown. I'm not going to do that until we restart after the setup is done. But that is actually something that was, new, was they put the splash screen on both startup and shutdown. Another one of the new features of Ubuntu 6.06 was this new graphical install option, which is by now the de facto standard of how you install Ubuntu. So it's a 6-step process. You get this new UX, or I guess program in general, where you select your time zone, you input your keyboard settings, and you make your user accounts. And why are these forward buttons still broken? That's really annoying. So we can go ahead and make myself a user account. So, yeah. And then what it also allows you to do is graphically, for the most part, set up your partitions, although it's not really all that graphical at this stage. In later releases, they actually had a better way to show the partitions and such. And there's your summary screen, and now we can go ahead and install. So this is much simpler to keep an eye on while you're actually installing the operating system. Convenience is key, and they definitely nailed it with the operating system at this stage. And look at how quick that is installing off of a flash drive. Well, flash is in quote marks because this is an internal MacBook Pro solid state drive, so that's why I say flash. So it looks like it's going to finish installing in around a minute or so. That's what I'd estimate. At least this is just the base system. Of course, it's going to take another like 5 to 10 minutes to install the rest of the drivers and the hardware and everything like that, but whatever. Interestingly, that 50% indicator was not completely center. Don't know why that was. Anywho. So talking about some other features or differences between 5.10 and 6.06 LTS, the theme is different. As you might be able to tell, it's not brown anymore. It's this orange-ish look to it. There's this new theme that's called Human Looks, which was based on the Clear Looks theming thing. I don't know how that works in particular, but that's just what I read online. But it featured a new orange color as the default color scheme, and you could actually change this as well if you were really into changing up the design of your UX. That was definitely something new in 6.06. So the buttons themselves have a more rounded look. It's a little bit more rounded. It sort of takes the look of Windows XP with the exception of the centered titles. And also another thing that we'll take a look at as well is the network managers, which were new, which allows you to explore both. Yeah, of course you can't access the security updates. They don't exist anymore. Anyway, as I was going to say, there's a new network manager that allows you to explore both wired and wireless networks. I don't know how many of them they're split up into, but I know for a fact there's one in particular that allows you to explore wired and wireless networks. But I don't think it's going to show up too terribly well inside of a virtual machine because all the hardware is being emulated to a simulated wired network, so it's probably not going to show up on video. But trust me, that was one of the new features that was introduced. Also, another feature that was introduced, or some sort of a difference, is that you could now use a USB flash drive or a USB hard drive to install the operating system, not strictly use it to set up the operating system. And I believe that's got something to do with this new graphical installer. They figured you might as well just go all out and let you install on whatever you wanted. You can install it on a USB flash drive if you really wanted to, and computers at the time could boot from USB sticks. So you could have a portable Ubuntu Linux USB stick that you could boot up into if your computer didn't have a hard drive or something. Very, very clever thinking at the time. I like it. So as you can see, installation is complete. You need to restart the computer in order to use the new installation. You can continue to use this live CD, although any changes you make or documents you save will not be preserved. Make sure to remove the CD when restarting the computer, otherwise it will start back up using this live CD rather than the newly installed system. So we're just going to go ahead and obviously restart, which restarts the whole operating system. And then beep. You didn't hear that, of course, but yeah. So as you can see, there's Unsplash on the shutdown screen. And yeah, there's a couple other things that are worth mentioning. One of which is that there's a built-in BitTorrent client now, which allows you to download torrents. It does not support magnet links, but it allows you to input a torrent file into it, and I gotta press enter, and it allows you to download torrents. So I guess that's something of a feature that Linux distros had at the time. So yeah, it still has all this garbage on the screen when it boots up, but it then goes into Unsplash, and then as you can see, it now boots up and mounts everything just fine. And here we are at the login screen of Ubuntu 6.06. One notable difference is the simplification of the login screen. Much appreciated. So instead of having all these options like thrown out all over the place, they put it into one options menu. Thank God this was the case, that they changed it and put everything in this menu, because it makes everything so much cleaner looking. Simplification and whatnot. It's just, they thought of everything, I guess. You could put it that way. There's still no arrow, so you still have to know to press enter to get past those login prompts, but whatever. It starts up ridiculously quickly. I actually downloaded the 64-bit version of this operating system, which seems to work just fine on VMware, which would make sense because I'm on a 64-bit computer. So here we are. So one thing that's definitely apparent, a lot of these icons are new. They changed the graphics icon, they changed the internet icon, they changed the office icon, the sound and video icon, the add or remove icon. Like, all these icons, for the most part, are new. There's still a couple of old ones like this. I would assume the CD-DVD creator is a little different, but for the most part, all of the icons are new. They revamped every single, the login window one's the old one, and the GNOME logo obviously doesn't need to be changed, but a good bit of the icons have been changed. So they look a lot more modern instead of reflecting the ancient 2004, well, ancient at the time in quote marks according to everybody, look of the icons that Ubuntu had. They just freshened them up and gave them drop shadows or whatever, and they just made it look a lot better, a lot more modern, a lot cleaner. And of course, you have to look at Firefox, the obligatory Firefox splash screen here. And this one, I believe, is 1.5.0.5, which was the latest at the time. And this is very simplified comparative to what usually shows up in Firefox by default. Normally, there's a lot more information here, but I suppose at this time, they just put everything that you needed to know inside of the About Ubuntu page here, which you could open up, and then you can get help with Ubuntu and go onto the forums and so on and so forth. I believe this was also one of the first Ubuntu versions to have multiple desktop wallpapers. I believe, if not the first, to have additional out-of-the-box wallpapers. This is the wallpaper from, and spoiler alert, this is what ended up happening. I believe Ubuntu 6.10 had this particular wallpaper, and I don't know. Don't quote me on that. I think that's what the default wallpaper is. Of course, you can have no wallpaper and have the default brown color, or this Dawn of Ubuntu, which looks pretty neat, I suppose. But the overall UX, it got a little freshened up. We'll just put it that way. So let's take a look at the menu editor, which I did not take a look at previously in 5.10 because it was much, well, simplified, I guess. It was a very basic menu editor. This one's got the more properly placed a la carte menu editor, which we could take a look at, which allows you to modify menus up here and allows you to put in pretty much whatever you want. So, for example, they're still hiding their Debian roots in here, which is pretty funny. So if you had something with education titles in it or education applications, this would become visible inside of the applications menu, which interestingly does not have the Ubuntu logo next to it. It has the GNOME logo next to it. I don't know why that is, but whatever. So say if you had something else you wanted to add into the internet category, like for example the BitTorrent client, you could enable it. And now if we go up here to internet, you can see BitTorrent becomes available. And now you can click on it, import a BitTorrent meta file, and be on your way downloading a torrent. So that's pretty cool. I believe there was also an application in particular in 5.10, which I did not take a look at, but we'll take a look at it here, is the soft phone, which was one of the features of the older one. I believe there was like a net meeting application in 5.10, which I did not take a look at in my last video, but this essentially is a similar application. If not, it boasts more features like being able to broadcast a phone call dial pad to your phone at the time, your mobile phone, and allow you to remotely dial or something like that if you're too lazy to dial something out on your number pad, which ironically stays open in the background, so you have to quit it, which is pretty annoying. But I suppose if you wanted a soft phone in the background, you could. And OpenOffice certainly got some new icons, which is pretty cool. Now it has this black styled splash screen when it launches, no more progress bar. But either way, it still looks the exact same as it did before. Different version number. Looks a lot more like an Office client than ever, I guess. I don't know. Let's see if we can find that network manager that I talked about. I think it was under administration and then networking. And this is also new. The style of pseudo prompt, or the thing that asks you for your password, is new. It fades the background out and prioritizes the password prompt so you don't lose it. I think that's a brilliant little feature. So that way, if something's requesting admin access, it's right there front and center, and then it tells you, hey, you need to probably look at this before you continue doing your work so you don't forget about it. So as you can see, this is fairly simple. It just shows you your connections. You can go into properties about them. As you can see, mine's configured for DHCP, which works just fine, of course. DNS servers, hosts, and host name and domain name and that sort of thing have multiple locations and have multiple different network settings for the lot. So that's about it for Ubuntu 6.06 long-term support. As I mentioned, the support for this operating system went until 2009 for the desktop release and 2011 for the server version, which was pretty good for a Linux distro at the time because, again, the normal Linux distros of the day got 18 months of normal software updates from the developers before they got phased out in favor of a newer release. But the long-term support has been a really popular one amongst people who want to keep Ubuntu running on a certain installation for a lot longer than what would normally allow, say, in an education environment or a software development environment. And it also allows greater compatibility because you can run a specific application on more than just like 2 releases of Ubuntu or something like that, which really comes in handy for software developers to make software for Ubuntu and, well, not just Ubuntu, but the Ubuntu derivatives as well. So that's about it for this. I suppose that's really all I can say. I don't see anything else in particular other than the freshened icons and this new CD/DVD creator thing in the Places menu and whatnot that were new. I don't know if I mentioned it, but in 5.10 there was a new file browser that's based on GNOME as well. I don't believe I mentioned that in 5.10, but there is a new file browser window that you can explore inside of the operating system and all that. So I believe, yeah, and there's a greatly simplified sound and video menu as well. And GIMP's still around. It's still version 2.2. I love the look of these progress bars with those sort of little 10% increments in them. It looks really good. So, I don't know, that's just me. So anyway, I think that about wraps this video up. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this down using the newer style of power option menu thing. And with that having been said, appreciate you all coming to watch, and I will see you all later.